Welcome to Now Daily. I'm Robert Crawford. Here's what's happening now. Talking about an article on Breitbart. Some people think Breitbart's controversial. This article is all over the place. What's really going on is what's called the UN Global Police Force, called the Strong Cities Network. Why is this concerning? Well, we've talked about in the past how the UN is really, when people talk about a globalist conspiracy, the UN is really the center of everything. The Council on Foreign Relations is another body, and through these political bodies and these not just political figures, but people that control the financial purse strings behind the scene, especially the World Bank and the IMF, since World War II, and really before that it started. But League of Nations after World War II eventually became the United Nations. The Rockefellers donated the land that the UN building sits on right now. And why is this a concern? A lot of people think the UN is a great organization. And I would agree with them if it really was for the purpose of countries working together in order to form a better world. That's not what they're doing. You have to really watch what the UN's doing, because to me, they're the biggest threat to America and pretty much almost every other country in the world. Why? Because they have an agenda, and a very specific agenda. And the UN Strong Cities Network is just one piece of that agenda. Now, we've talked about in past videos, and you should go on Now Daily and just search Agenda 21, which is now becoming Agenda 2030. Agenda 21 was basically created by the United Nations think tank, signed on in, I believe, 1992 by George H.W. Bush, and it's also been agreed to by every president since then. More importantly, it's been agreed to by about 183 other countries. And when people talk about the New World Order or this conspiracy or whatever's out there, I look at the facts. You can go on the United Nations website and you can pull up Agenda 21 and you can read the entire document yourself. You can even see the signatures from the heads of states of other nations. And when you start reading through these documents, you realize that it's extremely concerning. Because basically, in the guise of a marketing term called sustainable development, in that disguise, they're basically creating a communist, socialist, fascist. Really, I look at the political spectrum as two things. You have on your left, which is also the right, Republicans and Democrats are almost pretty much the same except for some nuances. They're authoritarians, totalitarianism. Pretty much the majority of governments are authoritarians. I can't really think of any that are on the other side of the spectrum, which is individual freedoms. And governments really, their right or their only use of government is to protect individual freedoms. At least in the United States, that's what it was set up to do. Now it doesn't do that. Now the states has all the power. They're the ones that are profiteering from it, and they look at it as cattle. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of people upset and going towards political people like Bernie Sanders right now and Trump. Very conflicting ideologies, but both really talking about the same problem. The financial system is a mess. We have a private Federal Reserve Bank. More importantly, this is really all planned by the UN and these globalists. Hillary Clinton would be considered a globalist. Marco Rubio would be a globalist. Ted Cruz would be a globalist. Goldman Sachs, these big banks, they're all part of this globalist conspiracy. At the very top, most people don't realize what's really going on because they don't take the time to research it. Well, I did. I read through the documents. The UN Strong Cities Network is basically setting up a UN police force. And we already know that UN forces, really foreign forces from Russia and China, have been training in the United States. But we're going to continue to see this. And my biggest concern is that we continue to siphon power from the United States and give it to an unelected body like the United Nations. And we're seeing that happen continuously. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is being talked about in private and trying to get passed right now, is part of this globalist plan to basically give all the national sovereignty of all these different countries to a globalist party like the United Nations, and they would have all the control. So the Strong Cities Network More specifically, Attorney General Loretta Lynch announced that the Strong Cities Network will basically override American laws, and they've pretty much agreed to it. I'm not crazy about some of the prejudices that this Breitbart article has. The United Nations is Sharia compliant world body. Some truth to it, not completely truthful. What we do know is we do see UN causing more conflict than preventing more conflict. Have they done all harm? No. There has been some good that's come out of it. But in the most part, the United Nations is really what we should be concerned of. More importantly, I think the United States should pull out of the United Nations. The whole thing should be disbanded because it wasn't set up to help us as individuals on a global scale. It was set up to create this new world order, this one world government where the UN and the IMF and the World Bank, and then through the World Bank and IMF, all the Federal Reserve System banks. Because yes, we have the Federal Reserve here in America, but you don't realize that over the past 100 years, they implemented that same system in pretty much every other country. It's in London. London was actually the first to start it. Then it came here. Germany, France, Italy, they all have a private central bank controlled by the same IMF World Bank powers. The euro was created by these same globalist powers. So you really have to look at the big picture. The big picture is they're trying to siphon as much nation-state power and basically override it with things like the TPP and now the UN Strong Cities Network. If the UN Strong Cities Network is allowed to take into effect, the UN can create laws that U.S. citizens or citizens of any other country would be obliged to go by. And if they don't follow their laws by unelected representatives, their own police force can come and arrest you. And I guarantee that their police force is not going to abide by the United States Constitution or any of our laws in the state or local level. Just not going to happen. So it's very concerning that we're giving more and more power to an unelected body of representatives that obviously do not have our best interest at heart. So this is just to educate you on what the UN's doing. Let's look at the UN Strong Bodies Network. You can go on the UN website and look up more of it. The Strong Cities Network. Justice.gov, so it's pretty much on all these different websites. You can go on the United Nations website itself. And check it out for yourself. But definitely something to be concerned about. This is not a conspiracy theory. I'm just looking at the facts of the situation. You need to go read Agenda 21. I read the whole document. It's on the UN website. We posted it on our link. Just type in United Nations Agenda 21 and it will pull up on the United Nations official website. And you really have to look behind the marketing terms. This is what politics does always. Is they give you a nice marketing term, right? You see Democrats, Republicans, whatever it is, they always say, oh, we want free this, free that. At the end of the day, nothing's free. It means give them more power, give them more tax money, let them control the situation, whether it's good or bad for you. They just want the power. So you have to look behind the marketing terms and see what's really going on. Sustainable development is a great thing. Everyone's for sustainable development, right? We need sustainable agriculture, which we talked about in our last video. We need sustainable energy, which I personally believe they've already figured out. Go to the Thrive movement. They have many scientists that have figured out the 0 point free energy, and so many stories throughout the last 100 years of things happening, starting from what happened with Tesla all the way on. There are definitely forces at play keeping the actual sustainability and things that would really help us in private and not giving it to us. Yet they use these terms like sustainable development thinking that it's a good thing, but when you look at it, all it means is more control. They actually literally want to only have the population in major cities and block off every other part of the world to humans. They don't even want you traveling in a desert or a forest or anything like that. That's their initial plan. You can read it yourself. Don't take my word for it. So that's it for today. Strong Cities Network, the United Nations, something very concerning. You have to look into it yourself. But pay attention, because when people say these terms on TV or they try to bastardize something, always ask, is there an agenda behind it that they're trying to push? This is Now Daily. Subscribe below. We're looking for the truth. If you find an article that's important that we need to get out there, just shoot it over to me. We'll start researching it. And I'm Robert Crawford. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening. This has been Now Daily with Robert Crawford, uncovering real stories worth sharing. Want more? Visit the website nowdaily.com/show.